Okay, so we are now recording. Okay, overall, everyone did really well on the midterm. I'm not surprised. There were just a few things that were a little bit more tricky, I think, for some of you. If you have any questions about anything I marked on your exam or want to review anything, just let me know, please. Everyone got the latitude of San Diego correct. That is fantastic. So good job. The three modes of heat transfer: conduction, convection, radiation. The azimuth due south in degrees is 180 degrees. And this is important for when we're going to start doing photovoltaic layouts, which actually will be starting on Friday. So it's really important to remember this, not just for the exam. The fifth facade is the roof. Oh, and those of you that just joined us, we are recording this. Just to let you know. The fifth facade is the roof. The axis of rotation for the angle of the Earth is 23.5 degrees. That is also the latitude above and below the equator for the plane of the ecliptic, which is the Tropic of Cancer or the Tropic of Capricorn. The first law of thermodynamics is that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Latent heat is the energy content required to change the state of matter. And sensible heat is the heat content proportional to dry air. And everyone read those very carefully, and I put them in the opposite order from when I was usually talking in class. So good job there for everyone being careful readers. The inverse or reciprocal of conductance is the R value, which can be stated as R value, or resistance. At what relative humidity does the wet bulb temperature equal the dry bulb temperature? And that is 100% relative humidity. Conduction heat transfer through materials depends on which two factors. This could have been better worded on, depends on, because there's three different factors that it depends on. So I could have worded it better, but everybody seemed to be fairly clear. The three things for conduction are the delta T, which is the temperature difference, the area of the material in square feet, and the material conductance. That is the value of the material that you have to go to a chart to look up the value of. For those of you that just logged on, we're going over the midterm, and the class is being recorded if you have any questions. Okay. Number 12, SHGC is solar heat gain coefficient. Number 13, heating or cooling loads are measured in BTUs per hour. You can either have the per hour or BTUH. I was very specific, though, that you had to have the hour as part of this answer because it's important to know that that load is measured over a period of time. And in this case, we're measuring it over the period of an hour. And this directly relates to sizing of equipment and the method that mechanical engineers use to generate the bin hours of heating degree days and cooling degree days. So it's important to understand it's BTUs per hour. Number 14, dry bulb temperature measures the sensible heat or the dry heat. At number 15, this is the question where I took a variety of different answers. I was specifically looking for some of the strategies that we had gone over in class, such as the Trome wall, or passive heating, passive cooling, wind chimney, natural ventilation. But many of you also put down shading, insulation, some other location, building orientation, and that is actually correct, that those factors do affect passive heating and cooling. I wouldn't call them a strategy, but they definitely are important to the concept. So I took a lot of different answers for this. If anyone has any questions about this question, please let me know. COP stands for coefficient of performance. And one reason to calculate building heating and cooling loads, there's a couple different reasons. You can use it to size the equipment. You can do it to look at energy conservation, to compare some different material performances, or to look at the overall annual energy use. And this is going to become more and more important for you guys throughout your careers, as more and more projects are going to become more net zero energy projects. So knowing what your annual energy use is key in order to be able to size your on-site generation appropriately. Number 18, the temperature at which condensation occurs is called the dew point. 19, forced convection requires what for heat transfer? And that's a fan, fan or pump. The screen shows just fan, but either answer is adequate. Okay, number 20, the definition of specific humidity, which is also referred to as moisture content. This was straight off of the psychrometric chart. And what I was really looking for here was that it's a ratio of water vapor per a quantity of dry air. It's measured in the units of grains of moisture per pound of dry air. But the key thing is that it's a ratio of water to air. For number 21, the term used for describing the height of the sun above the horizon, I was looking for the word altitude. I also accepted tilt, excuse me, and there are a couple other variations that were acceptable also. But it's best if you remember the best word to use to apply is either altitude or tilt. This is going to affect, again, our PV array layouts and designs when we get to that. What's better for insulation, higher or lower R value? Everybody got that right. It is higher R value. What type of climate does evaporative cooling work in? Dry desert climates. For number 24, the name of the cycle for air conditioners and heat pumps that they use for heat exchange is called the vapor compression cycle. 25, two materials that are good for storing energy. There's a variety of answers here: water, stone, concrete, tile. I did accept metal. Metal is much better at conducting heat, but it does store energy, so that was an acceptable answer also. I can't think of any good passive design examples though where I've ever seen metal used as the energy storage, other than when we start talking about chemical energy storage for battery systems. Number 26, I was specifically looking for one of a direct example, like a campfire, the sun's solar rays. There's a variety of different answers that talked about the sun's radiation, or a radiator that gives off radiant heat, radiant flooring systems. All of those were acceptable answers. San Diego is in climate zone 7. Evaporation is dependent on humidity or moisture saturation level and air movement. Water is not exactly an appropriate concept here because, again, it's humidity or the ratio of water to air that is important for evaporation along with the air movement. And let's just quickly go over the psychrometric chart with the 2 questions regarding that. At 80 degrees dry bulb temperature, what is the wet bulb temperature at 50% relative humidity? Here's our chart. So starting at 80 degrees dry bulb at the bottom, going straight up the temperature line until we hit the 50-degree relative humidity curve, and then go up parallel to the diagonal line for wet bulb temperature. We are at approximately 66, 67, anything in that range is acceptable. The second one was worded a little bit different as an example to understand the right side of the chart. So I was looking for the humidity ratio at 30% relative humidity and 70 degrees wet bulb temperature. So we're looking for the humidity ratio, which is along the right-hand side of the chart at 30% relative humidity, following the relative humidity curve up until it hits the wet bulb temperature of 70. And that is where am I? 30 degrees, 70. Actually, I'm just going to draw. So 30-degree curve to 70, approximately right there. And then we go over to the humidity ratio, and it's somewhere between a little bit above 70, less than 80. Anywhere in that range is an acceptable answer. Okay, so quick review on the midterm. Again, everyone did really well. If you have any questions, I'm available. Just let me know. And we are going to jump into talking about daylighting. This is one of my favorite lectures to give because I want to inspire you guys as designers and help you to start thinking about your designs and your projects and how daylighting can enhance your design and make it even better. So I'm approaching daylighting with a 3-pronged approach, 3 different ways of considering it and how it's going to affect your buildings. The first one is illumination as necessity. As people or humans, we all need a certain amount of light to be able to see. So there is a necessity to having light as part of our buildings, our designs, our projects. It doesn't necessarily have to be daylighting, but it has been shown that humans react more positively to daylighting than any artificial lighting. And all artificial lighting tries to simulate daylighting, and it can get close, but it's not exactly the same thing. So the first part of daylighting is that it is a necessity. And not just because we need it to see, but because it makes us better as people, makes us appreciate spaces better. And in that way, it is required for us to be able to interact with our environment. The second way to think about daylighting is how it affects us and how it affects how we feel, how we respond, how we're inspired. And I think this is the most important part of daylighting that we can consider for being practicing architects is don't discount how much it can contribute to part of your project, or how you approach a space or approach a solution to a situation. And that's what we do as architects, is we look at the design, we look at the problem, we propose solutions, we hopefully educate our clients and give them more than they're initially asking for. And so I think how the effect of daylighting on the human soul is the most beneficial part of daylighting that we have access to. This is a design tool, and let's use it and take advantage of it and really use it to make your project even better. So this is where I'm trying to inspire you. Then the third prong of daylighting is it also has effects on our thermal comfort level, on our heating and cooling levels in our buildings, and being able to control daylighting, to use it to our advantage where we want it, but control it so that it is also not disproportionately affecting our thermal comfort level. I'm going to get into the definitions of how I'm interpreting these words a little bit more, just so that you guys understand where I'm coming from and how I'm interpreting them. And at the very end of this lecture, we'll be going over the next assignment. And it's key that you understand what I'm looking for here. Okay, so when I say affect, it's I'm looking at the verb, where it is, the daylighting is producing it's producing an effect or a change in something within the project, the building, the site. Okay, it is affecting the building, it's affecting the room. And this is where the emotion is coming in, and how we respond as people to how that light is affecting the space. Effecting is the thermal comfort end of it, and that's the natural resolution of what is happening because of a certain situation. So if you don't have blinds on your window, the effect is going to be that daylight's going to come in potentially at times when you don't want it. Okay, so think of affect with emotion and how we respond. An effect is a more tangible, quantifiable result that is happening. So, illumination as necessity. There are so many different ways to bring daylight into a space, and they're subjective. You can't necessarily say one is definitively better than another. But what I want you to think about is how necessary that is. Okay, so on the left here we have a solar tube, which is a skylight, but a particular one that is designed, it doesn't have to be a straight, it can use a cylinder to actually bring and reflect the natural daylight down into a space. I would say that this isn't necessarily the most amazing looking apparatus that you can put on your building. However, should you have a situation in an interior space that doesn't have access to outside walls and you want to have the benefit of natural daylighting inside, this is a perfectly acceptable solution. The actual product, Solar Tube, is manufactured here in San Diego, and too bad we can't do field trips, or it'd be fun to go to the factory, but they can get pretty sophisticated, and they use reflectors and mirrors inside if they have to bend the light a certain amount of distance to get that daylight down into a space. They can be combined with a shade so that you can turn it on and off should you want to. And also, they also have some products that have backup artificial lighting for nighttime, so that not only is it your skylight bringing in your daylighting, but it can also provide your illumination at night when required. So in the right situation, a perfectly acceptable solution that has the potential to enhance the quality of daylighting in a space. On the right-hand side, we see a typical, I would say anywhere from 1960 to 1970 office building, just a pattern of windows, probably facing somewhere from east to west to the south, but a very monolithic approach. In this case, you're going to get the same amount of lighting in all of these interior spaces, and the control point then would be the interior shading devices. Again, not necessarily a bad approach, not necessarily an amazing approach, but I would say that some daylighting, even if you have to control it, is better than none. And as we have spent a lot of this semester already talking about our solar geometry and how the Earth rotates around the sun and how the sun angles over different times of year are going to affect our spaces, how we're going to bring that light in. It's going to be different in winter, it's going to be different in the summer, and how we treat that light when it's coming into our spaces. There is pretty much an unlimited number of opportunities. Real quick recap on our solar geometry. Again, we just went over this. The azimuth is the direction to the south. The actually, this one does say zenith as opposed to altitude or tilt. When we're looking at photovoltaic arrays and looking at angles, keep in mind we want to measure from the horizontal to the angle of the sun. That's the most important degree. Now, if you happen to know the opposite, from straight up and down to the angle of the sun, you can always figure out the other angle subtracted from 90 degrees. Okay, so for necessity, we bring in light, we attempt to control it, and we understand where it's coming from. Oh, one more example of our solar geometry. Again, understanding how the sun moves and how it's affecting our buildings is what gives us the tools and the knowledge on how to control that and enhance it and make it part of our design. That was necessity. Now the inspiring part is the effect. And this is where I want to challenge you as designers to learn from spaces and experiences around you, to pay attention to natural light and how it is affecting your reaction in a space and how you feel when you're in a room or a building. And this, I have a handful of examples here that I find very inspiring. This is I always get my Latin architecture example names mixed up. Parthenon in Rome, or correct me if I'm wrong. The Pantheon is the temple up on the hill. The Parthenon is the round dome in the cities, if I am recalling correctly. Anyway, amazing architecture. I'm not going to grill you on the name, but has anyone in this class been to this building, into Italy? Priscilla?
Yeah, I was there 2 years ago.
That's Alethea?
Yes.
I can't tell who's talking.
Yeah, it's Alethea.
Okay, awesome. And how did you feel in that space?
Well, I mean, the space is big, but it was extremely crowded.
Mm-hmm.
But just the immense light that was coming in, it was really beautiful. Like the space above me where it wasn't crowded, that was really nice. And it was very, it was calming just to see the natural surrounding of the light. But it is definitely something worth to go see if you're out there.
Absolutely, I agree. I found this picture doesn't really do it amazing justice because there can also be an incredibly sharp contrast between the dark spaces and then the light that's coming in. It can make the recesses really hard to see because of that direct contrast. But again, I find it just inspiring. And I encourage anyone, well, first of all, I encourage everyone to go to Italy at some point to study or to look at and experience the beginning of the history of Western architecture. And there's so many things, but definitely this should be a highlight if you get there and have the opportunity. Okay. Is anyone familiar with what this building is?
Is that by Tadeo Ando?
Yes, it is. Good. I believe it's called the Church of Light. It's in Kobe, in Japan, and I think this is just another amazing example of how to harness the sun as a design, design, not option, but opportunity that it's so simple. And Tadao Ando has a great way of doing that in so many of his buildings. But it's such a simple concept, but so amazing in execution and effect on the inside. I mean, regardless of religion or its symbolic interpretation, but just as a series of forms, I think it's just really just super amazing. It was a Pantheon. Thank you. Again, there's a reason I don't teach architectural history But yeah, yeah, okay. Thank you for the correction. Pantheon, and I get the P's mixed up. So Church of the Light, Batada Ando. And then I don't think this is another Ando building. But again, just a simple example of how light can come in through a series of shapes and create shadows and effects and forms. It's almost as if where the tree is here is its own separate outdoor courtyard space. You can almost see an invisible wall where that light stops. This is another Tada Ando building. This is a water temple building on an island that above this, there's a skylight in this circular building that runs around the top, and there's a pool of water above. And just how creating that fairly thin line, I don't think it's probably between 6 to 9 inches wide, of that sunlight just coming down that curved wall, and also how that light changes from one side of the curve to the other because of the angle of where the sun is coming in. Again, just really inspiring. And of course, when he pairs it with the board form concrete, the subtle texture pattern of that concrete wall is enhanced by the way the light hits it. And this is just a generic, another building in Japan. I've spent a lot of time studying Japanese architecture and several trips there over the years, so I might have a slight bias. Just if you haven't picked up on it. This is just a simple tatami mat room with a very low window. And this room is meant to be sitting on the floor. And so the window is at the floor level. And that is where you have the visual looking outside. And in this case, I believe it goes out to a courtyard. But again, just how you can control how that light is going to affect that space. Slightly more colorful. This is the cathedral in Nicaragua. The use of color, I think it's Legaretto, is the architect. The use of color and shape and the domes and then the pinpoints of light coming in. It helps craft the feelings and the inspiration that you feel inside. And I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this. This is the Kimball Museum by Louis Kahn. This is one of the galleries where he did a series of barrel vault galleries with a well-articulated skylight running down the center with baffles that help balance, reflect the light off the curve of the barrel vault so that it is not directly, there's no direct gain on the wall surfaces, because paintings are very, very susceptible to fading in light. And so by trying to just create this giant reflector of the concrete roof, you still get that daylight effect, but without the damage that it can cause. And there's all, I mean, you can really get into analyzing how this all works and everything, but again, museums are notoriously difficult for artwork for lighting, because the quality of daylight is so much better than artificial lighting, but it can also be so dangerous that control is such a key focus in this circumstance. So again, the section there. This is Gaudi's house in Barcelona, I believe. I've not been there in person. I had a friend go, and the pictures on the left are from her, and then I got the one from the right off the web. But I just loved the use of that central shaft of fairly small footprint courtyard with the skylight at the top, but bringing that light down all the way through. It's 4 or 5 stories tall. The other thing I really love about this is using the light in combination with the color, and the darker tiles are more, there's more darker tiles at the top, and they become less and less towards the bottom floor, so that you're getting more direct gain at the top of this light shaft, and so the darker tiles are not reflecting quite as much, or absorbing a little bit more, but then the lighter tiles at the bottom will start reflecting a little bit more and help that light bounce around towards the bottom, so that even though there's more light at the top, you still can get an enhanced lighting feel at the bottom of the courtyard. It's a very different approach than, say, the cathedral with the solid colors and how that works with the forms, versus the column of light with the variation of the colors and how that can work and manipulate the sunlight. So many different ways to approach this, and just crafting with light, using your buildings and your spaces to make them pop or wow or inspire or feel better or feel calm or excite or energize. That's the end of my examples. But there's so many, there's some terminology that helps us define the type of light that's coming in, like a sunlight, a skylight, or a clerestory window, or an atrium. These are just some very typical names. Roof monitors tend to be a pop-up that's sitting on top of the roof, where there is glazing on one side in one particular direction. A light well tends to be not covered at the top, versus an atrium tends to have a glazing cover, or sometimes even translucent, opaque cover above it. Light shelves are very common occurrence. They use the light shelves a lot in classrooms to try and bounce light further into the space. Clerestory windows, we've seen those a lot already. Reflective blinds, typically those tend to be more of a window treatment on the inside, but they could be built in to your actual glazing. An external reflector is just another way to help bounce light further into your space, or to use create a light duct with reflection and mirrors. This would be an example of like a solo tube, where you have a light source on the top and you have to bend it around to get to the space where you want it to be. Again, unlimited opportunities. Okay, part 3, effect of what the light does to our spaces. And these are purposefully, they're great, but you can be aware and of unintended consequences of too much light. Too much light can cause a lot of glare or overheating. I love this picture of the dog, the ears. One way to combat glare is by trying to bring in light from multiple directions. And I have a little story about this. Once upon a time, on one of my very first projects, it was a community center down in Otay Ranch. We had a multi-purpose room with clerestory glazing on the north side, and then a sloping roof that went down, and we had large glazing on the north side, and then very small glazing on the south side above a solid wall, because for the multi-purpose room we needed big pin-up wall surface area to use for whiteboards or pin-up boards, I forget. And on the south side where the solid wall was, behind that we had a short solid wall that had mechanical equipment on the roof. And we had this glazing, and we made the glazing opaque, but there is still some, because the mechanical equipment was on the roof, you could see it through the clear glass. So by making it opaque, we still got the light coming in. And I remember I was super young in my architectural career at this point, and my boss just insisted on having these small clerestory windows on the south to offset the light, the large amount of light that was coming in from the north. And it was a royal pain in the ass to get these windows in there. They weren't super big, and then we had to get them opaque. And the mechanical engineer the mechanical installer was like, well, why are you putting a window in front of the mechanical equipment? And the GC was like, I don't know, it seems like a pain to me. But my boss was so insistent that we had them. And once everything was built and constructed, I totally got it. I understood why. It's because there was so much light coming from the north, but by having this other light coming from the south, both into the space, it kept the glare down from the larger light source. So I hope you can learn from my experience, and hopefully you guys will get to have your own experiences similar to learn from other people that you work with too, and learn how to gently insist to the general contractor that you're working with that your design has a reason, and there's a very good reason for it, and that you want it built the way you have drawn it, despite the uphill battles that it can cause. So these are just a couple of quick little diagrams showing how trying to have light coming in from multiple sides of a building, or if you can't get it on two sides, perhaps a little skylight could help here or there. And this, I would say, you know, just use your 3D computer models and try out different simulations when you're with your sun patterns in your 3D models to see how the sun's coming into your spaces. Back in the day, we used to have to actually build a physical model and take it over to one of those camera light platforms. I forgot what they're called now. And you had to go through the whole like pre-digital camera phase, pre-computer modeling, and use a real light bulb with all these angles on it to figure out what time of year it was and where the light was going. And now it's so much easier. So don't discount that aspect of your computer programs. And last but not least, the effect of daylighting for creating passive solar heating systems when you have the opportunity for a project where that's appropriate. Again, control, control, control. That's the big thing, to watch your thermal comfort levels in your designs. I want to leave you with a Louis Kahn quote that was, I took this at the picture at the Museum of Art when there was a big exhibit there a number of years ago. And this summarizes for me so much of what I'm trying to convey in this lecture about daylighting and using it, and how it affect, how your designs can have that added enhancement to go beyond and go the next step. Where he said, structure, I believe, is the giver of life, but we are the crafters of that structure. So use your structure and let it create wonderful spaces.
I'm gonna clap to
Okay,
that.
so that's the fun part. Now we get to talk about the assignment. But this is one of the better assignments too, also. I would like you all to pick 3 different building examples, one that illustrates each of these 3 concepts. Illumination for practicality, affection for the human experience of the space, ideally inspiring, but you could also have the opposite to show what not to do. And then an example of the effect of daylighting in a space that is affecting the thermal comfort. You can use any local buildings you want. You can use any historical buildings you want. You don't have to go there in person. If you do have examples and pictures of buildings that you've been to and want to use them, that's great. And then I just want a brief description of why you think that picture or that building is an example of the concept that I'm looking for here. And if you need to use 1 or 2 pictures for a particular space or building, that's fine too. You don't have to narrow it down to 1, but I just want 3 different building examples, 1 for each idea. And I'm giving you a lot of time for this. So next week is spring break. If you want to go ahead and get it out of the way, please do that. But, well, other than COVID, I don't know. You might have more opportunity over spring break to get out and see something in person, or have more time to browse through all your architecture books and find examples. You can, I'm not looking for any particular formatting, just a picture and a couple sentences, and submit it online on Moodle. So I'm assigning this to be due in 2 weeks. That'll be the first Tuesday back after spring break. We are going to start looking at photovoltaic array design layouts on Friday, and there's going to be another assignment on Friday that'll also be due in 2 weeks from Friday. So I'm kind of like, there's a lot of time, but I want to give you the opportunity, have enough time to work on both assignments. Okay. Questions?
Thanks for the extra time. No question.
Oh, sure. Well, I hope you guys, well, I'll see you all on Friday, but sometimes you have to think about things for a little bit. So, yeah, any questions about how I'm using the words affect and effect? That can be the most confusing concept here. Not yet. Okay, well, feel free to let me know if you do. I hope you feel inspired. I really enjoy talking about these concepts. This is one of the more fun things about in building systems, or this class. The next one, when we do interior lighting, that's a really good one too. And I think the rest, we're doing this, PV layouts next. Oh, actually, that's not going to be the assignment on Friday. Friday's assignment is about the equinox. There's going to be a little task to do, and I'll go over that on Friday. So following that, we'll get to the PV layouts. So that's a little bit more necessity, but something you guys are going to need to know, because now they're required in California. Okay, well, it's been fun. You're almost to spring break. You can make it. Hanging in there in your design studios. I see nods. Okay, good. All right, guys. And again, if you have any questions about the midterm or want to talk to me about grades or anything, just let me know. I can set something up, or we can email. I'm available. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
I will see you on Friday.
Thank you.
Oh, is that right? Oh, share. Yeah, that was right.